Hey, everybody. Today I'm going to meet up with someone very interesting. His name is Jake Parent. Jake Parent is the owner of the Breathwork Studio in Tempe, Arizona. And on top of that, he's a shaman, and he's highly experienced with the psychedelic that I'm deeply interested in and passionate about, 5-MeO-DMT. So in this conversation, I want to pick his brain a little bit, figure out what he's all about, what his worldview is after his hundreds and hundreds of experiences with the world's most powerful psychedelic. I hope you guys like this talk, and I'll see you guys in just a little bit. What was regular, ordinary human Jake like?
So I was a business owner. I operated multiple businesses, and most recently, what led up to this journey was basically throughout my life, I had self-medicated my anger issues, and that I had an anger problem. But I was a professional fighter for 20 years, and then I owned CrossFit gyms, and I was just doing a lot of physical stuff that helped me manage my anger and take the edge off the top. So I really didn't notice that I had an issue. My friends did, that it was erratic. It wasn't like I was just angry all the time. They were just like, man, we're gonna turn on the news one day and Jake's gonna like wipe out a village somewhere. People like, wow, shit's just gonna go bad, and it's gonna go bad like, man, enormously. But it wasn't like I walked around all day angry. It was just like every once in a while somebody pushed the button and it was like, hey man, there's no off switch on this thing. So I had finished all that, was in a business, had two partners, and it wasn't going well. It wasn't going well financially, it wasn't going well emotionally, like the work wasn't going well. It was a ton of work, not much benefit, and I was just trying a lot of different things to try and manage. Like I finally figured out, like, hey man, there's an anger issue here that we've got to get to. It's creating a lot of stress in your life and everybody else's life. So I was trying to do things to manage it, and like did the whole checklist of like, hey, here's 25 things you can do to manage your stress, and none of them really worked. And through a wild series of coincidences, ended up at an ayahuasca ceremony, which is a much longer story. But I've never done any drugs before. I've never smoked marijuana. I drink a fair amount. At least I used to drink a fair amount. That ayahuasca ceremony was absolutely terrible. Had no preparation, had no guidance. I ended up setting 3 good intentions, just randomly, fortunately set good intentions for that ceremony. But it was a really, really, really difficult experience. It was very healing, it was very affirming. I was super happy I did it and did not ever want to do it again. It was like, I'm good. Like that did it for me. But at that first ceremony, I was told to bring 2 friends back. Like, hey, you have to bring these 2 people to ceremony. By this, whoever you talk to when you're in ayahuasca, I end up talking to God, but some people talk to Mother Ayas, some people talk to trees, like whoever it is you commune with. That's told me to bring these 2 friends back. So I managed to get one of them to come back. And I thought I was just gonna like drive them up to the ceremony, drop them off, yeet on out of there, go get a hotel room. But the ceremony was at a different location, and there was no way. Like, we drove 8 miles down some dirt road in Mexico, and they locked 2 gates behind us, and I was like, well, I'm not getting out of this anymore. I'm here. So I ended up having that second ceremony, and that one was a lot better. Like, that one wasn't just a horror show of emotion. It was a lot more affirming. After the first ceremony, I was meditating, and the voice of God came back to me and said, hey, you have to go back and do another ceremony. And I thought, I gotta do like 2 more ceremonies, maybe, like get this all sorted out in my life. And it's 7 or 8. And I was like, whoa, yeah, I'm really really fucked up. Like I'm a lot.
I got a lot to fix.
Yeah, I'm a lot worse off than I thought I was.
Yeah.
I thought I was a little further down the road than this, and so ended up being force-fed into that second ceremony. It was great, and then after that, I was bringing friends all the time, just like basically looking like, hey, you're screwed up, let's go, and take them to ceremony with me. And on my fourth ceremony, the shaman who we were working with was like, he's a very little teeny tiny Mexican guy. He has a high voice. He's like, this is how you become a shaman. And I was like, nah, man. It's like, I'm a businessman, and I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna do business, and I'm not doing this crap. And I ended up doing 10 ayahuasca and buffo ceremonies that first year, and like was basically resisting being a facilitator the whole time. And ceremonies 6 through 10 were really weird. They were like on the fourth ceremonies where I kind of cured my anger. Like I just wasn't angry anymore after that. It was just gone.
Wow.
But ceremonies 6 through 10 were super weird. Normally ayahuasca is a very communal experience that like you're in a group and you're doing your own individual work, but you're also connected to everybody else in the group, that you feel the group energy. And 6 through 10, I didn't feel any of the group energy. I was just by myself.
Wow.
Having weird experiences. Like they were not autobiographical, they weren't transpersonal. I was just like going through weird stuff. And at the end of the 10th ceremony, also 6 through 10, God didn't show up anymore. Like I didn't have any more conversations with God. Ceremonies 1 through 5, me and God were talking the whole time. And the 10th ceremony, God came back and said, you have now had every experience that somebody is going to have. If someone comes to ceremony, there is not an experience that they can have that you haven't already experienced.
Wow.
I was like, oh, well, could have told me that sooner.
Yeah. Before we went through all the weird stuff.
Yeah, well, it would have been nice to know what all the weird stuff was about, so I could like, take notes. He's like, you'll remember when you need to. And I was like, all right. And then shortly after that, I actually did get initiated as a facilitator by an Indian tribe in Mexico. When I was driving back, I was talking to my partner Kim, going, well, I'm a shaman. And she was like, thank God. And I was like, what do you mean, thank God? And she's like, everybody else knew but you. Like,
wow.
Like, yeah, this is the job. And then as part of that, I'd found breath work. And it is breath work is like a mini ceremony that you can do every week. So instead of having to get beat pillar to post by psychedelics and it being just an overwhelming experience, breath work's much more manageable. You don't have to go to Mexico for it.
Right.
And it was just easier to get people who were normies to do breath work than it was like one of my random friends as they go like, hey, you've never done any drugs either. Let's go to Mexico, drink some jungle juice, and talk to God.
It's a little bit less of a sell.
Yeah. So it's a little easier to get people involved in it, and it has great results. It has great benefits. It really helps people a lot. So that's when I started doing the breath work as well.
Now, how long after that till you actually got a location and stuff?
Probably, so that was like 2017 that I had my first ayahuasca ceremony, and it was probably late 2018 that we set up with our own location.
So this is all just rolling kind of fast.
Yeah.
And before that, you were just a businessman. What kind of business were you doing at that time?
I've always done like a combination of technology and marketing.
Okay.
So that at that time we were we were a professional services business for attorneys. So we did all their advertising, marketing, booked their appointments, scheduled their appointments. Didn't have anything to do with what went on during the appointment because
that's legal stuff, right?
Yeah, unlicensed practice law, you can't do that. They would meet with the client, and then we would do all the follow-up and billing and follow-through and everything for that. So basically, we were a turnkey business for attorneys. It was reasonably successful. Like other people might have been happy, but for like as hard as I'd worked and for what we had done for it, I was like the results are not what I expected.
How did it go from you owning a company to like sort of seemed like you changed your life, like this huge pivot in your life. And all of us trying to wonder, like, how do we get that pivot ourselves? How did it happen for you?
Do not do it the way I did it.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Okay.
Full stop, 100%. Don't recommend this for anybody else.
Right.
Don't even recommend it for myself. So one of the things that made that first ceremony so difficult is when I was having a conversation with God. We're out on a beach in Mexico, and I left the palapa. It's like, hey, go out on the beach. So went out on the beach, says dig a hole. So I'm like, all right, start digging a hole. I thought I was going to puke in the holes, but I dug a massive hole. I just kept digging until I was told to stop. And then the voice of God came to me and said, throw yourself in the hole. And like all I was wearing was like a little pair of sweatpants shorts. And I'm from a long line of furry people, and like being topless and rolling around in the sand was not a. I was like, man, that's a lot. I did not want to. I'll be combing sand out of my fur for like 3 weeks if I jump in this hole. I'm like, how about we not? And God's like, throw yourself in the hole. No, throw in the hole. No, the hole. No, hole. So we go back for about 5 minutes, and finally, like, fine. Throw myself in the hole. And God's like, don't bother. I was like, good. So I go back inside, lay down on my mat, and God says, so I was like, so what are we going to do next? And he's like, why would I bother telling you anything? And I was like, well, I'm here to do the work. And he's like, you can't even throw yourself in a hole when I asked you to. Like, if I give you a real assignment to do, you think you can do that? And I was like, all right, fine, I'll do whatever you tell me to do next. He's like, all right, go home and quit your company. I was like, didn't see that one coming. So like, just go home and quit? He's like, yep, just go home and quit. How about I do a resume first, like start looking for some jobs.
Let's prepare a little bit.
Let's do some stuff. I'm an owner and I run like a third of the company. Like I can't just go home and like
just leave, right?
Deuces. Like good luck. Hope it works out for you. That's not how that works. So I cried about it a lot. I'd like to say I handled it a little more bravely than I did, but I basically cried, begged, groveled, tried to negotiate. And that's one of the great things about God. You can negotiate with him. So I eventually negotiated that I would go home, give my notice of 3 weeks because I felt it was just irresponsible to leave, and that I would not prepare a resume and start looking for work during that 3 weeks. That was what I negotiated. I was like, this seems, I'm like, I'm going to go home, I'm going to quit my company, I'm going to end up homeless and carless, and people are going to ask me why, and I'm going to be like, nah, because I had this, I've never done drugs before and did ayahuasca, and now I'm a bum. So I was like, I do not, I don't think it's a good pitch for other people if I end up being a bum. But one of the visions I had was I was standing on the edge of a cliff and there was just blackness beneath me. And God said, if I told you to jump, would you jump? I was like, yeah, sure, I guess so. He's like, do you think I'll catch you? Yeah. All right. Jump. Like, go home and jump. And that was it. So I came home, talked to the one partner that was a reasonable human being and said, I'm quitting in 3 weeks. And they said, well, that doesn't work because we got a vacation planned and we're going to be gone like 3 weeks from now on a 2-week vacation. Can you make it 6 weeks? And I was like, seems reasonable, sure. So worked the last 6 weeks, didn't send out any resumes, and then quit.
Wow. And so that's how we kind of get.
That's how we kind of get here.
Here, and it was all after an ayahuasca experience.
Yeah.
So God tells you to come home, and when God speaks to you, is it a voice? Is it like
I
a
am
you and
sitting
me?
at a table with him like I am with you.
Okay.
And he looks like, to reference the Matrix again, he looks like the architect from the Matrix. White guy, white suit, white beard, close cropped hair.
So he appeared to you as a person, like anthropomorphized, not as an entity. Which is...
That said, somewhere ceremony 3 or 4, when I was talking to him, I was like, "This is really what you look like?" And he just laughed and was like, "No." I was
of course
like,
not.
All right, cool. But it's also during that first ceremony, I asked about like, hey, what religion is like, what religion should I follow? Like, where should I go? And he's like, all religions are just cultural artifacts to overcome the tendencies of that culture. And I was like, all right, good enough. Message received.
That's a deep one, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You
think
can
about
unpack that for quite a while.
Yeah, like I'm thinking about that. I'm like, man, he's got a point. That's a really good point. So like you come home and you drop your company, man, and then what do you do after that?
I'm going to tell you one more thing about God.
Okay. You can tell me as much about God as you like, actually. I love hearing about this.
Yeah, certainly. One, don't ask to talk to him. I wouldn't. At one point during that ceremony, I was like, are you my higher self? Is this just me talking to myself? Am I just having a conversation with the enlightened me, or like, am I really talking to you? And he just kind of nodded, patted his knee, and stood up and walked out of the room. And for the next 5 minutes, I sat there and ruminated over the same thought for like 5 minutes, just cycling the same thought over and over and over and over and over again. And then he walked back into the room and sat down, and he said, that's you talking to yourself. This is me talking to you. I was like, saw that question coming, didn't you? Like,
man,
no, can't really debate that, can I?
That's an incredible story. Yeah. I'm going to think about that for a long time. I'm going to talk to myself about that for a long time. What do you think now, though? Because you've had so many experiences of God, I'm assuming, with 5-MeO-DMT and ayahuasca, and maybe even other places, maybe even sober. Is it the same thing? Do you still feel like there's a duality where it's him and you, or it and you? Yeah.
Yeah, he and I don't get hung up on like who or what is God or how it presents. That like however you see the divine is how you see the divine, whether it's divine source. If you see it as a tree, great, man. That's how you see it as a tree. That's what your energy connects to, and how you can receive the message. That's how you receive the message. So yeah, I've had the experience of being one with source several times. It's a lot to take. And it's the only way to truly approach the spiritual is to give up the physical, and that once we come back and accept the physical, then we are a spiritual being, but we're not pure spirit at that point, and we can't have that unified experience of singularity.
I think that's the hardest thing to get about spirituality, because I've been practicing for the better half of 6 years or 10 years daily. I go to 4 meditation retreats a year.
Right.
I have for the past 10 years. And I've never had, I've had some oneness experiences, some experiences of being one with my environment and stuff.
Right.
But what 5-MeO-DMT revealed is just like,
it's a whole different ballgame.
It doesn't like, it's not something you can like even guess is the case.
Nah.
Even, so I don't understand like how someone gets there with meditation. I've been thinking about that, like.
I think that, I think to get there with meditation, you have to be predisposed towards that.
You mean like genetics and stuff, or?
Genetics, spirit, energy, whatever it is. Like, hey man, if you want to run a 4.440, it doesn't matter how much you train. Either you can run a 4.440 or you can't. There is no amount of training. If you can't run it, there's no amount of training that's going to get you that.
Yeah, it was, that's kind of what I've been thinking about lately too, because I watch a lot of different sources for like spirituality and stuff, and there are some ideas from this guy named Lyra Gura who says that genetics play a large factor in whether somebody can attain it even at all through meditation.
Right. I'm sure there's, I would agree with that. I don't know whether it's purely genetics or whether it's energetics or what's going on with that. That again, it's like, hey, you may not be able to run a 4.4, but you can run faster.
What's a 4.4? I didn't even ask you.
Okay.
I just assumed it made sense to someone out there, but
okay. So in football, whenever they they have a combine that's a test. They bring all the football players in and they test them. And the 40-yard dash is one of the big indicators of your athletic prowess. How fast can you run 40 meters? Oh. And 4.4 is probably, it's about as close as you can get. Like, you can't get much faster than that.
So it's 40 meters in 4 seconds?
4.4 seconds.
How long is 40 meters? Is that from here, that wall over there?
No.
40 meters is further than that?
Oh, yeah. Let's see, that's 57, 3, that's like 20 meters. So it's twice as far
twice
as
that.
Yeah.
Damn, bro. Yeah, I can see how that would be a test.
Yeah.
For sure. Huh. Yeah, so I guess if you can't run it, you can't run it, you know? If you were born without legs, you're not going to do a 4.4.
Yeah, if you weren't born with like the genetic gift to do that, you can't do it. Can you run faster? Yeah. Can you run longer? Yeah. Are you going to be able to do that feat? No.
Do you do any spiritual practices outside of breath work, or?
I meditate.
Okay. What kind of style of meditation? If you
So my style of meditation is very remedial because spiritually I'm not very talented. I'm not very gifted in most senses when it comes to spirituality. So my meditation practice is just to sit perfectly physically still. I don't force myself to breathe a certain way. I don't force myself to think. And then I find if I can just sit completely physically still for about 9 minutes, somewhere around that 9-minute mark, magic happens. And that most people who are not gifted meditators, which I wasn't, my meditation coach fired me before I went to ayahuasca. Like,
damn, dude.
Like, you're so terrible. Like, there's no.
You can't even sit in the room, dude.
Yeah. Well, it was like, he's, finally says, your problem is you're too disciplined. And
wow.
I was like, I don't even know what that means.
What could that possibly mean?
Yeah, so I sat with it for 3 days because, like, when you tell me something I don't understand, I just, brute force think about it until I get an answer. And I realized that when I would meditate, I would sit there and I'd go, all right, meditation time. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna,
dude, yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, and I was like, and that's mostly the kind of people I attract. You're a little bit outside the norm of the people who normally come to work with me, which, I'm grateful to meet you and grateful to have you.
Grateful to be here. Really.
Yeah, and that, they're not gifted natural meditators. They hear about all the benefits of meditation. And when it comes to meditation, I think if people sold running the way that meditation gets sold, nobody would ever run. So, like, if people talk to you about running and all they ever talked about was the runner's high, and then you went out and ran,
and it didn't happen,
you'd be like, man, my ankles hurt, I'm out of breath, I'm sweating, I'm hot, everything hurts.
Yeah.
Where's this runner high that everybody's talking about? Whereas most of the time meditation is not that great. You're like, yeah, I've got a monkey mind, and that's the point of meditation, is go, yep, there it is. It's a monkey mind. In that, so I think meditation, in some sense, I'm not saying that the results aren't there. I'm saying that the level that people talk about it isn't appropriate for where people are starting.
Yeah. A lot of people, they just think of the Kensho moment or the breakthrough moment where suddenly you become enlightened or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's certainly what I was chasing. I mean, back when I first started,
yeah.
I was doing it because I knew my brothers and sisters were going to die one day. My mom was going to die one day. And I wanted to just be skating, dude. I wanted to be like above it all. I read about these Zen masters who like fucking walked on air and shit.
Right.
Like, you go and sit in the quiet room and just died one day because they chose to and stuff.
Right.
And that's kind of how I wanted death to be like, I could just turn on a light switch and drop my body and mind permanently.
Right.
So that got me through like the first 3 years.
Nice.
Until that fuel source wore down, and now after that, it sort of became about something else.
Yeah.
And I don't think if I didn't have psychedelics, I probably would not have stuck it out as long.
Yeah. I think
as I did.
with meditation practice, I think it takes about 3 years before you really become adept.
Yeah.
That it's about a 3 year
Ramp
up time. And the thing with like the difference between psychedelics and meditation, that I can meditate now, whereas before it was pretty hopeless. And then after my first ayahuasca, after my first 5-MeO experience, I was like, there isn't enough meditation or therapy in the world that would have gotten me here. It just wouldn't have happened. And I joke, meditation's like blindfolding someone, sending them out into a 10-acre forest and saying, somewhere out in this forest, there's a piñata. And if you hit this piñata, you're going to experience joy, bliss, nirvana, and everything's going to be great.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, you go out there for 20 minutes, you swing your stick around, you never hit it. And then you go do it every day for 20 minutes. And every once in a while, you hit it just randomly. You're like, I got it. I did it. I did the thing. And then you come back and you sit down to meditate the next day, and you can't do it because you're wearing a blindfold. You don't know how you got there. You don't know how you got back, and you can't repeat it. And that takes 3 years of just like randomly walking through the forest before you can consistently walk to the spot where the piñata is. Whereas what psychedelics do, at least it did for me, is it took the blindfold off. I walked right to the spot in the forest. I whacked the piñata. I turned around and walked back. And the next day when I sat down to meditate, I was like, all right, the blindfold's back on, but I know what direction I need to go now. I know where it's at. Even with the blindfold on, I can kind of like, all right, there's this tree, and I'm going to keep going that direction, and I may not hit it, but I'm going to get close every time. And it just sped up that cycle for me.
I was sort of blessed because I had a teacher who's a Zen master, and I lived with him for like 3 years.
Nice.
So like getting to live with him, and then like seeing, he's sort of like, to use your analogy, you are blindfolded still, but he's like got your hand.
Right.
And he's like walking you in a certain direction. The only thing is you just have to go.
Right.
And not think about it too much, or not try to go in your own direction over here. And
Right.
that was what took me 3 years.
Right.
Was to just like become a student.
Right.
Like, because, you know, I thought I was a master at first, and I was just going to sort of, I don't know.
I'm going to start off here, and then I'm
going to
go
even higher, man.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he's talking about, but it took me 3 years to just settle down and actually become a student.
Right.
And even go in the direction that he was. And as soon as I started doing that, I started having sort of breakthroughs. But yeah, I don't think I would have stuck it out as long as I did without psychedelics. Why do you think psychedelics exist?
I think they're God's Easter eggs.
God's Easter eggs.
Yeah. Well, you look at them; they're all different colors. They're colorful, and they're like
Yeah.
they're like the Earth's Easter eggs, where you find them, and you know, it takes you on that. It removes that veil, so that you can see that other side. That, you know, in all the religions, they talk about the veil over our eyes, and that experience takes away that veil. And I think that it's for people like me. Like, some people are naturally gifted; they can enter that state anytime. Like, they don't need to. They don't need to work. They're there. They have that gift, and they're telling the rest of us about it. We're like, we're crazy, man. Like, but they are having that experience, because like once we do the psychedelics, we're like, yeah, man, that's a thing, that's a place, that's a
total possibility.
Yeah,
I can see that happening.
Yeah, whereas before that, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. So yeah, I was very closed off. Like, before my first ayahuasca ceremony, I was agnostic. I was like, could be a God, might be, might not be. I don't know, neither do you. And I'm like, yeah, for sure I know, but you can find out on your own.
Given all your experience and stuff, what do you think the truth is? What's the deepest truth you've attained in all of your travels and experiences?
So there are three things that are essential for the creation of the universe. And
let's go.
What are they? These are the three righteousnesses. And then there's the three evils, that when people talk about evil, it's the opposite of whatever righteous is. So the first thing that has to happen for there to be the creation of the universe is free agency. I don't want to get involved in the free will debate about whether you have free will or not, because it's a big neuro debate going on about that. I don't care about the debate. Nobody debates free agency. you have free agency. You have the ability to make a different choice. So for the universe to exist, there has to be free agency.
Okay.
Step one. That's the initial buy-in. After, and then the opposite of free agency is, are you enslaving somebody? Are you taking somebody's agency away from them? So that's like step one of being evil. Step two, there has to be energy. And everything is energy. Everything. This table, the mics, the voice, like what we perceive as reality is our five senses picking up different energy waves. That, you know, the difference between sound and sight is just the frequency level of the energy that's moving. And that Donald Hoffman, who's a neuroscientist, has said, you know, doing all the mathematic models, the likelihood that we are perceiving reality as it actually is zero. Like, if we've done all the math, there is zero possibility that we're seeing reality as it is. What we are seeing is, like, what is the reality that we need to see of the energy that we interact with that will allow us to survive.
Right.
So that is, the second thing is energy. The evil of that is, so it's energy in and energy out. Are you a parasite on energy? Like, so the parasite stealing, being parasitical, taking without giving, no give and take of energy, that would be evil. And then the third thing that has to exist is harmony. That when energy is in harmony and free agency, that how we perceive that is love. And that, you know, love's it. People like to say love is the ultimate. It's like, well, that's really step three. You gotta have agency, you gotta have energy first, and then you get to love. But it's the greatest experience that we can have of the energy of the universe is being in harmony, and that the removal of all barriers is what love is. And that the opposite of love is, you know, disharmony, chaos, creating disorder and discomfort where none needs to exist.
It definitely seems like we as humanity seem to go through these phases where there's immense harmony and then immense disharmony. And it seems like the hills and the troughs are quite deep and quite high.
Yeah.
You know, because we have peak America and then we have like 1940s Germany, for instance, and it's just like this wide gap, you know.
Well, it's the peak of a wave is going to determine how low the trough is, and the trough will determine how high the peak is. That if you take off, like, I don't want a low this low, all right, you can cut that off, but now your high is not going to be as high.
So, like, why do you think that occurs? On a species level, why do you think that occurs on a macro level?
Well, it's back to energy. It's all energy. Like, you can't inhale without having exhaled. You can't exhale without having inhaled. That, like, anything that goes up like that has to come down, and there's always balance. You know, one of the theories is that in the end, the universe equals 0 or 1, and it's most probably 0. Like, what is the primeval atom that caused the Big Bang? There's probably nothing. That if you take all the energy of the universe and you come back to baseline, those two cancel each other out, and there's nothing. So there is always going to be balance. For every genius, there's an idiot. For every righteous person, there's an evil person.
Yeah.
That, like, it's always going to balance out, which is one of the reasons people are like, we're going to level up everybody. I'm like, you can't.
Yeah, you know, I was for the last sort of like 10 years of my life, I've been really intensely wondering, what is this? Yeah. What is this physical experience that we're having? What is an emotion? Why am I here at all? I've been thinking about that a whole lot. Do you have any, when I took 5-MeO-DMT, when I had that experience myself, its answer was pretty much, it doesn't matter. You know? It's like, dude, you're worried about the wrong thing. Like, it actually doesn't matter why any of this is happening. All that matters is, you know, I'm right here. And, like, I'm clear, and I'm not hiding from you. What do you think?
I'm going to go a different, I'm going to make a couple points here. The first is the difference between purpose and meaning. That life has no meaning. Life does have purpose. So meaning is inherent in the object. That when we use a word like purpose, the word purpose has meaning inherent in the word. You cannot separate the meaning from the word. The word and the meaning are combined. They can't be separated. But when I start to use the word purpose in a sentence, now that word has purpose. If I start using the word meaning in a sentence, the meaning has purpose in that sentence. That purpose is decided, purpose is chosen. And the same is true for life, that there is no meaning to life. There is no goal, there's no outcome. We're not here for any reason other than there's an excess of energy, so we exist because that energy has to go into something. And most commonly it ends up in a six-sided fractal. That, like, if you put energy into something, if you study cymatics, the sound where they put sand on little plates and then run frequency through it, it always forms these fractals, different types of fractals. And humans are a six-sided, if we had a tail, we'd be a six-sided fractal. So we're just a form of energy that, like, hey, we put enough energy into this thing and now it has to animate. So that's one of that's why we have life, I think. And then, one of the things is like panpsychism. Panpsychism is the belief that everything has consciousness, that we may not be able to relate to it, but like this floor has consciousness, this table has consciousness. It's just happening at a rate that's slower than we can perceive.
Right.
So that's part of it as well, is that everything has that energy of the universe in it, so it's got some sort of conscious element to it.
I mean, I've had meditation experiences completely sober. Like my first ever sort of like meditative insight, was I was sitting next to my cup and I grabbed my coffee cup and suddenly I like knew my coffee cup one-to-one. So like I became the coffee. So I felt what it was like to be coffee cup.
Right.
Like if you feel your ear, that's what earness feels like.
Right.
I felt coffee cupness.
Right.
For the first time, and that was interesting. So I think I am on the band camp of people who believe that, or at least who have experienced that there is some element of consciousness to everything. Do you think that this sort of energy that is this experience is itself consciousness, or is consciousness something which is emergent, or is consciousness something which is like primary and everything emerges?
I think it's an emergent phenomenon.
Okay.
That's one of those things where they, back before they had microscopes, they thought that they like, hey, eventually we'll look inside the brain and there'll be little gears and mechanisms happening there, and that's where all the thinking takes place. And they kept going down smaller and smaller and smaller, and then there's the soft problem of consciousness and the hard problem of consciousness, and they don't have an answer. And it's most probably because it's an emergent phenomenon. That's like, hey, if there's some AI scientists right now that are saying that, like, given enough data, a database becomes conscious. And people are understandably unhappy about that. But that's really one of the ways that I view us is like our brain is basically a holographic plate. That's one way to look at it. In that, if I ask you to think back to a memory that you've had, and then pivot 90 degrees and look at it from a different angle, you can do that. And if it's a video or if it's a picture, you can't do that. You can only do that inside a hologram to be able to have that 90-degree shift. And one of the things that happens with holograms is that when you shoot a hologram, what comes through interference gets coded onto the plate. If you break the plate in half, the base, it's not like tearing a picture in half. You have the same image twice. Right. It's just at a lower resolution. So that's also one of the theories about psychedelics, of like the feeling of I know everything and I'm one with all. Yeah. Is that your holographic plate gets reconnected to the source, and now you have the entire image.
So you're saying, do you think that psychedelics sort of increase your consciousness somehow?
I think I think that return to source is like taking a broken holographic base and putting them
Like
back
sliding
together.
those two pieces together.
That there's no additional information. It's just an increase in resolution. That's what happens when you break it in half. Is that the resolution decreases, not the image.
You know, in spiritual circles, a lot of people look down on psychedelics because they're not legit. You know, oh, you had an LSD experience, you got high, you know, you took 5-MeO DMT, you got high. What do you say to people like that? Because it's spiritual people. It's not even regular folks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
This is one of those things where, in general, I'm very non-fundamentalist, in that, like, hey, how you see God is how you see God. How you go up the path up the mountain is how you go up the path up the mountain. Which reminded me to talk about the symphony. That was the other analogy of life I wanted to give you. That your path is your path. And what happens is, with a lot of gurus, a lot of spiritual people, they find a way up the mountain, and they think that's the only way up the mountain.
Yeah.
And that's what they're saying is, the way I did it was the right way. It's like, I worked hard, and I studied, and I did this meditation or prayer or fasting or whatever it was, and it was really difficult, and you cheated. And it's like,
there is this sort of vibe of you cheated your way. You didn't actually earn it.
It's like, I'm here for the result. Like, I would like to be rich. I don't care if I got it through the lottery or I got it through hard work.
Yeah. It's the same thing at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, and the people that won the lottery are probably a lot more humble because they realized it wasn't their effort that did it.
Right.
Whereas the spiritual person, probably there's a fair amount of pride going on there of, like, I did this, and it's like, did you? Did you really?
So you said the symphony of life.
Yeah. So I don't really like the analogy of life being like climbing a mountain to achieve the mountaintop and achieve nirvana. That's not really how I look at life. I tend to look at life like a symphony, and it's the harmony and the beauty of the symphony coming together that makes it beautiful. That everybody plays their part. Everybody may not be playing all the time. Everybody may not even be in tune all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are playing a different song.
Completely.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, you need to go join another band. But it is, you know, the point of climbing the mountain is to get to the mountaintop. The point of playing in the symphony isn't to get to the end of the song.
Just to be here with it.
It's just to be here with it and to make something beautiful. And I think that's how I tend to look at life, is that it's a symphony. It's my job to play my instrument to the best that I can and to create the most beautiful experience while we're doing this that I can.
I have a close friend, his name is Sam, and he told me one of his DMT trips one time. He said that he awakened in a room that was super futuristic looking, and there were 2 giant aliens in the room with him. And Sam immediately went to his contemplation. What am I? What am I? What am I? And the aliens looked at him and saw that he was doing that and were just like, oh, come on, man. And then he had this epiphany. After a few minutes, he's like, okay, what am I? What am I? And he looked around. He's like, okay, I don't know what I am, but what am I going to do now that I'm here? And then all of a sudden, everybody cheered.
Right.
And he said that was a huge life-changing experience for him, because he realized, I mean, just like I realized, like a lot of the wondering and stuff like that is completely unnecessary, because the fact is here.
Yeah, hey, let's go look at cool stuff.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite memes. Is like it's like a picture of the aliens looking at somebody doing DMT and going, "This is so ghetto."
This is so ghetto.
Why can't you just change dimensions like we do at will?
Yeah, right. With our minds, just turn the channel. Right?
Yeah, gangster planet Earth.
So you're a shaman. How many people have you facilitated, or how many?
Couple thousand.
Couple thousand people.
Yeah.
What's it like to? Because I'm sure, like in the case with our situation, where you introduced to me the 5-MeO DMT, and now all of a sudden I'm idealizing you. Do people do that to you a lot, or what's it like to have to hold that kind of responsibility over someone's sanity?
Those are 2 different questions.
Okay.
One, I don't accept or even recognize your idolization. Like I just I was joking with a friend today that I don't have any self-consciousness. Like, if you just watch me walk around, I'm just always walking around. Like I don't ever have that self-doubt unless I'm on camera. And then
suddenly it appears.
Yeah, all of a sudden I'm self-conscious, and then like the first time I tried to shoot like a Instagram video by myself, and I'm up there like Porky Pigging the shit out of it, and like I can't talk, and I was like, is this what it's like for other people to be self-conscious? This is terrible.
Yeah, this is painful.
Yeah, I don't want any part of this shit. So yeah, I just don't accept it, don't recognize it. It doesn't have any effect on me, good or bad. That like some people may not like me. I'm like, I can't even bother to tell them to F off. I'm like, all right, man, it sucks to be here, moving on. Early on in this, like after I started breath work and started facilitating my own ceremonies, which, the people in Mexico very nicely threw me out. Like not in a harsh way, but just like, it was like, hey man,
you're good?
Time for you to go home and do your thing. And I was like,
okay.
I don't want to go home. I don't want to keep going here. And they're like, no.
Were you there on a retreat?
No, they have kind of like a traveling circus that goes around Mexico that like goes different cities, and I would just follow them around and go to places and facilitate with them. It's beautiful. And I'm welcome back. I can go anytime. Like they want me to come back.
Yeah, but when it was your time to teach and stuff, it was just like, all right, man, you got.
Yeah, you gotta go do your thing, and I didn't want to. Way more fun to not be in charge. But once I created this, Kim, one time she's talking to me, she's like, well, with the position you hold. And I'm like, what position? She's like, well, the position you hold. I'm like, I made all this up.
Yeah.
Like, this is just me making shit up. And she's like, well, this is the rule. And I'm like, well, I made that rule. Like, that's my rule. I can break that rule if I want to break that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I'm not breaking the rule. We're changing the rule. I don't like that rule anymore. We're doing it differently. So, like, for a long time, I had resistance about this position I hold. Because I was like, it's not real. I'm just a dude with a drum. But I'm not just a dude with a drum. That early on at ceremony, people would tell me like, oh, you hold such beautiful space. Thank you for being here. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know what this space holding thing is that you're ascribing to me. I was just sitting here. Yeah. And they're like, no, you were holding space. I was like, for sure I wasn't. And then like later on realizing that like just me being me was the holding of the space. And that like I do it consciously now. But that holding space is the gift of your awareness so the other person can experience their awareness. And that it creates the container of what's safe and what's allowed and what isn't. That like I have a very, very large, expansive container that I create. So like, hey, you can go anywhere, you can do almost anything you want to do, but when you get to the edges, you'll know. At the last ayahuasca ceremony, we had a girl was talking, and she asked me about it afterwards. She said, I had a weird experience this time. I was like, all right, what happened? It's like 3 different times I'm sailing through the universe, and I'm going as fast as I can, and I'm just having a blast, and then bang, I'm back in my body, and I'm in the room. And like completely sober, like, what happened? Why'd it go away? And then she's like, all right, lays down, closes her eyes, and starts journeying again. And I was like, you got to the edge. And she's like, what? That was the edge of the space that I was holding you. You hit the limit.
Wow.
And you got put back to the middle of the field.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I've never heard of anything like that before. That's really, really cool to hear.
Yeah. So it's keeping them safe. And it wasn't until I worked with facilitators who were not very good that I realized like, oh, I am pretty good at this.
Yeah.
That it takes a tremendous amount of resolve to let people have their experience, depending on how difficult it can be. That like the 5-MeO experience is of the ego death, and that not of all of us die very easily.
Yeah, some of us don't let go easy.
We are not going to let go of the sides easy.
No,
and
no.
Some facilitators will try and soothe you. Like, it's okay, you're all right, and I'm not going to soothe you. And it is difficult at times because you want to tell them, like, hey, it's going to be better if you'd let go, or I can just come over here and poke you in the head with the 2x4 and get you off the side. We can do this faster, which is usually what I end up doing. So that's part of it. It is energetically, emotionally, spiritually expensive. That when you meditate for yourself, there's a rejuvenation to it. Now take all of that awareness, turn it into concentration, and then focus it on somebody. And it's very costly. It's very depleting.
I introduced my friend Bo to DMT some years ago, and when I did that, we were trying to figure out how to get the vape to work.
Yeah.
Because we just couldn't get the burn right. And so he was coming over later. I really wanted to give him the experience for some reason, even though I hadn't had the full experience. I just was like, I came here for this. You're going to get this. I know you want it. So I put like a little more than I thought would, because some of it would burn and some of it wouldn't, and he would get something. Well, he had sort of like a mostly 5-MeO DMT experience, and it changed his life completely. And as I left, I remember feeling the weight of that responsibility. Is this guy going to like lose it now? Is he going to lose his career and be homeless? He turned out fine.
Right.
But
right.
I was really afraid. And so that's why I'm curious. Like, do you ever feel that? Do you ever feel like, oh shit, what if I broke this person's brain by accident?
All the time.
All the time. And what do you do with that fear? Do you just let it wash over you, or do you ignore it, or what?
I definitely don't ignore it. I think some of that's just responsibility. Like, hey, I have the care and the tending of this person's soul in my hand, and I need to make sure I handle it appropriately, and that like I give this the attention and the intention that it deserves. And there are things that I can do in ceremony that are just so easy for me, like it takes almost no effort, and other people are like, we didn't even know that was possible. And I'm like, yeah, you just, and they're like,
wow.
And they're like, could you at least act like you're trying? And I'm like, no, because I'm not. I'm not gonna put a bunch of theatrics on it if there aren't any theatrics needed.
I think that makes you sort of unique, because I've read about shamanism. I'm very fascinated with shamanism and how it all works. And so I've read multiple books on shamanism, and a lot of shamans from down south, they actually put on a show. Even though what they're doing doesn't require the show, they could just do it. They put on the show because it helps everyone around, and it also helps the person believe that, something had occurred.
So part of that is the set and setting. That like if the other person doesn't have a belief structure, doesn't have the set and setting, and you just do the thing, it's going to bounce off them because they're not receptive, they're not open. You have to open them up. So there are times when ritual is appropriate, because ritual creates that set and setting to create the environment so that person can have the experience. And then there's other parts of it which I think are just mostly grandstanding, where they just want attention. Like the number of people who come to me that want to be shamans that should just like, hey man, you just want people to clap for you. You should probably go be like a stand-up or a magician or something, or go do community theater where it's a little bit more honest for people to clap for you that way. And I am working on my ability to accept, but like the applause doesn't mean anything to me. In general, I'm very self-directed, and since a young age I have been. That like when you do that perfect thing, when you hit a tennis ball perfectly, when you hit a golf ball perfectly, when you hit a pool ball. I'm trying to think of another example other than balls, but like that's all I got right now.
Okay.
That like, you know, if you've ever been at a pool table and you hit the cue ball perfect, you don't have to look anymore.
Right.
As soon as you made contact, you know.
It's true.
How do you know? But you always know and you're never wrong.
Yeah, there's
like when you do that thing, when I was a professional fighter, when I hit people, like people talk about that walk away knockout, like you just hit someone, you don't even look, you just turn around and walk away.
Yeah.
You know. The second it happens, you know. And the same thing happens in spirit work, same thing happens in energy work. When I did it right, I know. I don't need your applause. Like I'm grateful you're grateful, I'm glad it worked for you. But like, I already know.
Man, there's just so much I don't understand about the spirit world and spirituality that's just now sort of becoming open to me. You know, I wish that somehow I could like download all of your experience into my brain and just like experience the direct experience of it so I could know it one-to-one without having to go through all that myself.
This is, I'll give you 3 points. The first two are shamans only have 2 jobs. We either reconnect you with your energy that you've lost touch with. So we reunite you with your own energy. 2, we remove energy from you that's not yours.
Oh, interesting.
That's our only 2 jobs. My only job is to make you whole. And it's your energy of like, do you need to be reconnected? Do you need to have something removed? Those are the only 2 things I can do. The way I do them depends on the situation. And then third, I will now give you every lesson that I received during my apprenticeship to be a facilitator. Listen to spirit. Like every time I would ask a question, hey, why do I use the rattle? Listen to spirit. Why do I use the drum? Listen to spirit. Why do I smoke? Why do I blow mapacho on people? Listen to spirit. And like after 3 months of that, I'm like, does spirit have a manual? Because I'd like some more detailed feedback on why I'm doing the thing that I'm doing.
How do you become a shaman anyway? How does somebody do that if they want to do it? Why do people even want to do it? I'm curious.
I don't know why anybody would want to do it.
Okay.
Like, if I had a choice, I wouldn't. You know, I was not having a good week and threatened to quit a couple months ago. I was like, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna cut my hair. I'm gonna get a job, and I don't want to do this anymore.
Wow.
And
it's amazing because it even happens here. Because that's how I'd be feeling some days.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it, I'm throwing my whole life away. Getting out of here.
It's a job, man.
Yeah.
Except, you know, I'm talking to God when I'm saying that. I'm like, I quit. I'm cutting my hair. He's like, try it. Well, if you're gonna put it like that,
yeah.
Fine. I'll pick up my rattle and go back to work.
So how y'all be becoming shamans though? You just do it a lot?
You do it a lot. You know, usually there's an initiatory event where you have the death experience and like you just completely and totally die and like watch yourself deteriorate and become like the body decomposes and you go away. And the first time I died, I was like, well, that's it. I died. And my second thought was, who said that? Right. Yeah. Like good point. Who's doing this talking now that I'm dead? I thought this was done with. And then I would say most of it is just the practice of doing it. That like you just have to do it, and there are people who have a gift, people who don't. I think everybody has a spiritual gift, but their spiritual gift may not be as a facilitator, as a guide. You know, not everybody can hold space. You know, I've worked with people who are desperate to be facilitators, and it's like, hey man, it's like trying to teach a tone deaf person how to play the piano. It's like, man, I can teach you how to put your fingers on the keys, but if you're tone deaf,
it's not gonna matter, you know.
It's not gonna matter. And then there's those people with perfect pitch that like you don't have to show them anything, and they just
do it.
They just do it.
And it's usually those guys who don't even want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the funny part. It's like that with meditation too. You go in there and there's some guy who's super talented, has a Kensho, and it's like first session, and then it just never goes and sits again. He's just content.
Yeah.
The rest of us struggle.
I would joke that like my first year being an apprentice, it was like I was a baby Huey, and that I was enormously, like, by the fourth ceremony, the other shaman and the other facilitators knew, like, oh, this guy's enormously powerful, and he has no idea what he's doing. Like, he's got all this power and zero ability, and that was, that was kind of my gift and my curse, was like, I'm really strong and not very sensitive.
Do you think you'll be doing this for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
Yeah, I had another guy that I was working with. I was showing him how to give people hape, and going through the instructions. We got done with it, and he sat there for a second. He goes, "So this is what we're doing for the rest of our life, huh?"
Yeah, like, give people hape.
Yeah.
What is hape anyway?
Hape is a shamanic snuff that comes from South America. It's the original tobacco. We call it mapacho. It's Nicotina rustica, so it's the original strain of tobacco. And when you smoke it, you realize why they came up with the other strains of tobacco, because it smells terrible. So they take that, they grind that up to a powder. They take other Amazonian plants, dry that, grind it into a powder, and then mix it in with the tobacco, and then blow it up your nose. And it burns a lot for 20 seconds to a minute and a half. And then tobacco is one of the only plants that is both an upper and a downer at the same time.
I didn't know
that. It can ground you and elevate you. Like, sometimes people smoke because they need energy, and sometimes people smoke because they need to, like, calm down. So you're smoking the same thing for both of those? Yeah.
Wow.
So depending on what plants it's mixed in, it can be grounding, it can be elevating, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be really physical. So the effects from hape are pretty varied.
I've wanted to try it, but I've kind of been sort of hesitant to it. Mainly reason why, because when I do breath work, I get really scared. As you probably saw, like, I'm very timid when it comes to spiritual experiences. I have this really thick wall of defense, and I just hate going over it. Once I'm over it, I'm okay.
Right.
But I'll be in the middle of a breath work session, and I'll just be tripping balls, and I'm afraid because I don't have a body, and I haven't quite dropped the body and mind yet completely, and so there's like this middle ground of fear. And then like the hape comes around, I'm like, oh, this is supposed to like push me even deeper. I'm just afraid of having a panic attack. I don't know why I'm afraid of having a panic attack. I mean, I've had a ton of them. It's never a big deal. Yeah. But I'm still scared every time.
I'll tell a story about panic attack 5-MeO. We had a person who came and did 5-MeO with us that suffers from panic attacks.
Oh boy.
And during the middle of the full dose 5-MeO experience was having a panic attack, like full blown
screaming,
oh gosh, melting down, clutching my leg like a little kid, holding on to dad.
Oh man.
Screaming, wailing, thrashing around. And then that part was over, and then the bliss and the beauty and everything else comes afterwards. And just kind of went, whew. Wow. Almost lost control there for a second. And everybody just died laughing. Like, probably the second hardest I've ever laughed at a ceremony.
Oh my gosh.
Like, almost lost control. Like, I don't know what losing control. Like, hey, that was complete total loss control there, bud. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I did my head of 5-MeO, I did a micro. And the first one was just like, it was like being in my mom's arms. I remember thinking like, oh, this is so feminine, and like I'm in my mom's arms and cradled up. Right. And there's this deep peace. But then the second one was not like that. It was like there's no more peace. It's just like I found myself being sort of like, it felt like I was being pulled underground. Right. Really, really hard, but also flying at the speed of sound. Right. And at one point, I actually like gripped to try to hold on to my body, and like I just knew it was futile. Like it was just completely pointless to do that, and I just disappeared for some time, and there was no sound or space or touch or smell or anything. It was there was no me. There's no consciousness. It was just like it's hard to describe. And then coming out of that, it felt like I was going through a womb. And I'm opening my eyes, I'm just crying and laughing at how I'm imagining.
Reborn?
I'm seeing myself imagine all this into existence.
Right.
And it's all coming together. Is it necessary to do the full dose, man? Do we really got to go all that way?
It's, do you have to? No.
Because I'm thinking like, I'm sure it could get deeper than that. What could possibly be deeper than that, though? You know? Is it longer? Do you go into it longer, or is it just more
the duration is the same. The intensity changes. I've had 5-MeO experiences where I felt so much joy that I couldn't take it anymore. Like the joy had to stop.
Wow.
Like I couldn't take any more happy. Like you think like, oh, I'll be scared, or I'll have fear, some negative emotion, and I won't want that. But like literally there was too much joy. I thought I was going to explode if I had any more joy in me. So it can get a lot deeper.
I definitely will be going there again and experiencing that again. I just I'm really afraid because I'm in my 30s and I spent my 20s. I just turned 30 recently, so I spent my 20s doing psychedelics and spirituality and stuff. But now I'm 30 and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna be 40 in 10 years, so I got to figure out something in the world. Because I have to interact with society, so it's like I have to figure out my way.
Right.
And part of me is afraid if I go too deep into the 5-MeO, I'll lose.
You just wander off into the desert and be
be a holy man.
Mystic for yeah.
Or I'll just not want to do anything anymore, or lose my drive or something like that. It didn't happen the last time, but I'm still sort of afraid that happens.
So here's the thing that a lot of people who achieve worry about that, like they're going to become spiritual and like lose their motivation. And a lot of times when people get done with 5-MeO, one of the most common questions people have is like, what now? Yeah. And it's like, well, you've been trying to achieve, you've been trying to strive, you've been trying to do these things in your life to satisfy your ego. And now you don't need to do those things to satisfy your ego anymore. So now what am I going to do? And they're confused because they don't know what to do. And if I put you on a deserted island and you had food and water and didn't have to worry about food and water, and you're just on a deserted island, in about 4 days you're going to do whatever you are.
Whatever you want?
No, whatever you are.
Whatever you're going to do, whatever you are.
So for you, on day 4 you're like, all right, I've been chilling. I've had all of the coconut cocktails I can handle. I've watched the waves. I have chilled out. I have relaxed. I'm going to go over there and beat on that tree and start making some music. Me, I'm like, start stacking these rocks up. I'm going to start making a wall because I got to start building some shit.
Yeah.
That like, the fear of I won't do anything because I've achieved this level, it just isn't. It's not in our natures. That whatever your nature is will emerge. It may be different than what you were doing before.
Yeah.
But like your true nature wants to express itself. It wants to create, and what it creates is really up to like who you are. But you're going to create something.
Yeah, coming out of that experience, I realized that like my whole life had been about an insecurity that something was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And my whole life up to this point had been about trying to ease that feeling that something was wrong with me, and now I don't have it anymore. And so it's like, you're right. When I went home, I was just like, didn't want to make music anymore, at least not for the same reasons. I didn't want to do art anymore. I didn't take anything very seriously, and I would spend sort of like hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours out of my day just being okay on my bed, just sitting there, just being okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah.
I have one more question for you.
But you started making music and art again.
I did, yeah. And of course, it came back, and now it's even better than before.
And you're not making it because you're insecure. You're making it because that's who you are.
Yeah,
you want to make shit. You want to make shit that's cool. Like, hey, look at this cool thing I made. You may like it. You may not. If you don't like it, kick rocks.
Yeah, right.
I like it.
I like it. I think it's really.
I made this thing.
And that's kind of hard to explain to people because I don't have like a solid career. Everybody wants to know how you're going to make money and stuff, and I'm just like, well, how about I don't want to think about that. I just want to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
One last thing. You say you don't have any self-consciousness. Is it possible to completely awaken with psychedelics like 5-MeO-DMT permanently, to where there's no more closure back into the ego? It's just an open state, and you're just like that now.
I don't think so. I think psychedelics are a way to open that door and to make it possible for you to know that that experience exists. Mm-hmm. I think long term, it requires meditation, prayer, journaling, Kundalini yoga, drum circles, whatever it is. Like, you have to have that daily discipline and practice to develop what that is. That psychedelics give it to you on a platter, but I think we've all met a lot of psychonauts who are pretty judgmental. Like, it's not just the spiritual community that can be that way. Like, there's some.
I was one of those guys.
That it doesn't necessarily. It gives you an opening. You know, with psychedelics and breath work, it will give you capacity. It does not give you ability. That's one of the things that I think therapy is really good for, or a good therapist is good for, is that they can give you the words and the tactics to execute on. Mm-hmm. That psychedelics and breath work aren't necessarily going to give you the words and the strategies to deal with somebody who's problematic in your life. It'll give you the capacity and the ability to, so that you're not triggered, so that you can say the good thing. Whereas before, like, if you'd just gone to therapy, like, hey, well, try saying this in response. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm too pissed off to say that.
Yeah.
And if you just do the psychedelics, it's like, well, I'm calm now, but what am I supposed to say to this person who's being rude to me to handle this appropriately? It's that you need both practices of it.
I would love to just talk to you forever. I feel like I could go on and on forever in this situation. I do want to ask one more fun question.
Sure thing.
Universe is over. Everything is about to end.
Uh-huh.
We all know it's coming.
Yeah.
You have been decided. You get to write a piece of paper.
Oh, man.
That the next things that come along are going to get to read this. You're going to have to read this, and they're going to understand what exactly you meant. But you get to leave a message for the next group. What do you got? You can think about it as long as you want. It's kind of a deep one.
You're responsible for yourself.
I like that. Mine was brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Please brush your teeth.
But that is a form of being responsible for yourself.
Okay, cool.
That, like, you think about most of the, my mind went to, like, be in harmony, but it's like, hey man, wolves are going to show up and they're going to feed on the sheep.
Yeah.
Like, how do we keep them away from that? It's like, hey, do you know who's responsible for the safety of the sheep? The sheep. Mm-hmm. It's not the wolf's responsibility. It's the sheep's job to make themselves safe, to be in harmony, to live the life that they want. That there's, I see a lot of people who are, I was one of them when I was younger, blaming other people for their unhappiness and their misery and their misfortune in life.
Yeah.
Instead of just going like, yeah, man, it's my job.
Yeah.
That's my job. I don't need anything from you. You don't have to behave in any given way for me to be happy. If you choose to behave like that, I may remove you from my life. Mm-hmm. But that's still my choice. I am my responsibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me.
Sure,
thanks for talking to me. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I could go on forever in this conversation. I don't have a limit to how much I can talk about psychedelics, and I hope if you had a message or something, you got it across.
Yeah. And
I didn't dominate it or something.
No, man, it was great, man. I appreciate it. It was a beautiful conversation. Cool. Appreciate all the conversations. Love talking to you, dude.
Thank you.
As it turns out, I can talk about this shit forever too. So.
Yeah.
I actually have my universal answer is not listen to spirit. I'm like, all right, so this is what you use a rattle for.
Yeah.
Like, I'll start breaking it down for people. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it too. So me and you are alike in that way.